We would now like to invite the moderators and panelists for the wrap-up session. And we would also talk about what needs to change ultimately and the role of public-private collaboration in improving labor exports. We would now call on stage Mr. Ali Cheema, Associate Professor of Economics, Lahore University of Management Sciences, to moderate the session. Honorable Minister, can we please request you to come on this stage and be part of this session as well? Thank you. We also have with us on call Honorable Minister for Finance, KPK, Mr. Taimur Salim Chagra, again online to be a part of this session. So I think he's already online. I would now request Mr. Muhammad Ali Khan from IFC to please also join us on stage. Mr. Dirk Schmautzer, please, moderator for panel 2. Ms. Zahra Khan, moderator for panel 3. And Ms. Fatimah Afzal, moderator for panel 4 from Department for International Development.
So we have a very special guest today who I blackmailed, coerced to and pushed for him to become part of this panel. His name is Dr. Tahir Andrabi. Can I please ask him? Dr. Tahir Andrabi is currently setting up the Department of Education at the Lahore University of Management and Sciences. So thank you so much for making the time and being here. Thank you.
Can I request everyone to please directly speak into the mic so that Hello. Yeah. So Mashal was really understating when she called it a panel. It's certainly much larger than a panel. But the idea of this last panel is to try and bring everything that you've heard since the morning together and sort of talk directly to policy, since we have the Honorable Minister here with us, and to really think forward as to how all these different pieces that people have been analyzing and talking about can be brought into some kind of a framework, so we have some actionable items to move towards. The Minister has said Punjab is thinking about coming out with a growth strategy, or it is. I'm sure KP must be doing something similar, so this is a moment when I think that this conversation can actually end up having some really deep roots into the actions that are taken. So the way I wanted to organize that was I wanted to do a bit of a recap and split it into 3 different segments, the conversation we have, and I'll keep moving between panelists. I want to kind of recap, since the Minister was not here, some of the people who've come late weren't here, to really talk about what are the moving challenges in terms of labor market opportunities abroad. I know that the first 2 sessions talked about it from the perspective of the international labor market. We're very lucky to have with us Dean Tahir Andrabi, who, as Jawad said, is setting up the School of Education. But what Jawad didn't mention is Tahir has been involved with research on education in the labor market through a study called the LEAP study, which has been tracking students between the age of 7 and 12 for 6 rounds since 2004. So this is longitudinal data on actually what happens to people and what are the choices that they are making as they're getting educated. So we want to bring that domestic piece into this discussion too. That'll set the context about the challenges that we're dealing with. Then we move to how, and that's where we bring in both Fatimah and Zahra, who were moderating basically two very important sessions about job readiness and about overseas employment. And then the last segment is really to pull all this together in terms of what are the policy implications and what should be the moorings of strategy. I don't want people to repeat, but I want people to give or summarize succinctly a couple of important challenges that your panelists felt that needed to be addressed, and give us a takeaway from policy for this third segment. So that's how I want to actually moderate this session. So we can go directly to really starting or beginning to talk about sort of the changing landscape of market opportunities abroad. I know, Dirk, that your session was dealing with that. So I'd like to start with that and really throw up what are the 2 or 3 big challenges and what would be the takeaway for policies from there.
Thank you. So I think the biggest challenge that I took away from the labor market panel, but to an extent also from the education panel, is the need to reshape the training machine. There's a big training machine in the country, and it's producing a lot of outputs. So I think you put that in the right way, but it's not necessarily leading to the right outcomes. So how can that machine be more outcome-focused, more employer-centric, train for all the skills we heard today, right? There's a lot of mindsets, and how can you force the machine to almost do that and do it much faster and quicker than it does so today? Because in that fourth industrial revolution panel, we talked about the need to redo curricula in a much, much faster pace than we do today. And I believe one key tool to do that, to reshape that machine, are ministries of finance. Right? The way you fund education, the way you tie funding to outcomes, the way you can involve the private sector into training. There's no need to say there need to be a couple of big government institutions that do all of this. There could be a system, and Pakistan could actually lead that system, that says, look, whoever produces outcomes and whoever produces it in a return on investment mindset, we'll give funding to those people. And if they do it well, actually, they get the funding from the private sector directly. But I think that is one big takeaway. The other one I took from the panel on the Industrial Revolution. And here I would say there is a big need for the government to say, one, what are the facts on this? Right? Let's get away with all of these myths and scares, and let's understand the facts. What is the impact on the Pakistani economy? And then let's understand, one, what are the opportunities? I loved the panelist that said there's a big economic development opportunity from new technologies. It's not all about jobs that will be lost. And then based on that, let's have a holistic strategy that can cover everything from education systems, economic development, kindergarten. And I think that is something the central government, or at least the provincial government, needs to do, because it's much too big for any individual actor.
I mean, let me kind of push this discussion a bit forward. I mean, I guess the context of this study and the reason why we're all this together is that Pakistan has been financed largely by remittances. And that's where the current account and the balance of payments problems comes in. We have the finance minister of KP, who I'll bring in just in a moment. The KP economy is particularly vulnerable to that. The sense I got from the report, I wasn't there in the earlier panels, is that there is kind of market opportunities that are shifting. So there's shrinking opportunities and expanding opportunities. So how do you think, if you're thinking as a policymaker, what would you say to the minister on your left and the minister of the audio in terms of the different types of markets and in terms of the ladder within these markets, where should they be placing themselves? I think that's the first question for me. Yes.
So I think the learning from the panel was that indeed the sectoral focus should shift.
Okay.
Right? This is going forward probably more about service sectors in which Pakistan hasn't traditionally been that strong.
Okay.
But the learning has also been that I think it will be very difficult for the central government to say, okay, now we shift sector focus, because the government has relatively slow circles of doing such adjustments. Right. Maybe the answer is more, let's put a machine in place that can do these adjustments in a very kind of agile way.
Sure. And why would you suggest moving away from the traditional sectors?
So I think these were all the reasons laid on the first panel around, look, oil prices are going down, construction is going down, the growth forecast, especially in the Gulf, around retail, around care industries, healthcare also, are much, much more positive. But these, and I think that was the outcome of almost every panel, these are all sectors where your traditional employer would say, but I don't have Pakistan on the radar on this.
Okay. So let me kind of bring in Dr. Andrabi now, and when you have two economists on the panel, you always get a graph. So we're going to see a graph which Dr. Andrabi has a challenge to explain to you. It's a very nice graph, makes a very important point. But it's bringing the domestic side into this discussion.
Yeah, I'm a professor. I have to show a graph, okay? I'm sorry. Thank you, Ali, Jawad Sahab, Minister, panelists. So I want to ask the following question. In the context, which is in kind of studies of international migration, the first order question that we want to think about is what is called self-selection into migration, which is that the migrants the people who migrate, are they of the same characteristics and the same kind of productivity and skills as the people who don't migrate? And because typically migrants make more money than people who are left behind, and the question is it because of opportunities or because they are self-selected? So typically we think that there is positive selection, which is that migrants who go abroad are typically the ones who are more enterprising, the people who are more able, who are able to take risks, and so on. So we wanted to see whether this is true in our context. Now, we can get some ideas about the quantities of these people through labor force surveys of various kinds. What we don't have is kind of a measure of their skills or their backgrounds to the same extent that one would want. So I want to say two things. So the first is I want to put it in the context of migration in general. So we have a sample, we have a tracking, this is about 5,000 to 7,000 people who we have known a lot about for the last 15 years. In particular, we tested them a lot when they were little. This is the only panel of its kind in the world and is a model for lots of other work around at Oxford and the World Bank and others. So we know a lot about these people when they were young as to what their educational levels were, in particular also what their educational attainment, cognitive achievement was, so I can do that. So the first thing is, this is a panel from rural districts, from the rural parts of the districts of Attak, Faisalabad and Rahim Yar Khan. It is a representative panel. We've put a lot of effort, so this is really representative of rural Punjab, one south, north and center. So you have to take it as a representation of reality. So the first thing is, there is tremendous amounts of within-country migration, rural-urban migration. In our sample, at some point or the other, of the males, so these are males now roughly between 20 and 30, 41% have gone out of the district for work, which is a very high number. There's a comparable study being done in Vietnam, where the numbers are nothing like this, nothing. That's like a more traditional agricultural. The second thing is very fascinating, which I can't answer the question of selection, but when people leave the district, what they're earning is about 30% more than the people who stay within the district. Okay, so there's this tremendous benefit for leaving the district as far as employment is concerned. And that is explaining a lot of the wage differentials in our sample right now. So this migration of moving to the cities. Now you think about international migration. When you look at international migration, we have right now in our sample 6% of these males are living abroad, mostly in Saudi, UAE, and Qatar. That's like the three largest. Saudi is the largest, followed by UAE and Qatar. About 90% of these people are in these three places. And there, the wages that they earn is roughly 3 times the person who is left behind in the village. So it's tremendous income production. So my first question is, are the people who are going abroad, are they different in terms of selection from people who don't? So that's the graph. Okay, guys, forget the line for a second. and look at the histogram, the x-axis is these people's average test scores on all kinds of things that we tested them. So as you go from left to right, the people on the right are the more skilled in terms of cognitive achievement. Very detailed testing, very state of the art. So we know a lot about that. And on the vertical axis is the probability that a person of that test score will actually migrate internationally. Now, if there was positive self-selection, the line that you see on the top should be a straight upward sloping line, which means that people who performed well in school, people who had higher skills are the ones who migrate. But what do you see? So the people on the left are the ones, this is Pakistan, right? I mean, who did really poorly on our tests of various kinds. This is over 6 years of their life we tested them. So this is very thorough. So you can see, for instance, if you look at the extreme left of this group of people actually got, they were the worst performing. And out of that, 10% of them are in Saudi, UAE, or Qatar. Look at the extreme right. These are the people who were the best performers, and they are much less. What you see is the people who are going abroad are really the middle of the distribution. Now, this distribution is representative. I don't know whether you know Pakistan well enough. 75% of their mothers are completely illiterate, like zero. Okay, so this is representative of Pakistan. So they're coming from very poor backgrounds and 120 villages. So what does this mean? What this means is that there is very little relationship between people's skills before they go and the money they make when they're abroad. We think of education, right? We tell our kids, study hard, go to school, etc., you'll do well in life. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case here. People who are doing well in terms of getting jobs abroad has got nothing to do with how much they know. So I think that's something for us to think about. Secondly, what this does is create this differential between people who stay back and people who go abroad. And I am not a person thinking about immigration. I think on education policy. So my question is, what really happening to returns to quality of schooling? I mean, this seems to be a disconnect between people who do well and people who manage to go abroad. So I think this matching process of people who go abroad and others just doesn't look like a normal, what we would call a well-functioning market where the best and the brightest are the ones within this population. I'm not comparing apples and oranges. This is all people from rural pins and dehats. Thanks.
So let me kind of bring the two things together. So on the one hand, you have people going abroad in the bottom end of the value chain. And there's this kind of perverse selection that's going on, so you don't necessarily have to be that skilled to go abroad, but that creates these distortions in your domestic market, because even with poorer skills, you can get these lotteries, right? So you can get these distorted incentives. So in some sense, one of the key implications that is coming out from the first panel is to try and sort of move up the value ladder. And that's also because those markets at the bottom are shrinking. But in some sense, what Tahir is adding to that piece is to really think hard domestically that how do you realign the best talent in terms of going up that ladder. So the matching problem has to be sorted. So Tahir just wants to add one thing, and then I want to go.
One of the things that we will actually get evidence on, because a lot of these people in our sample have come back. So one of the things that we want, and we will get this thing in the next year or so, now the next 3 or 4 months, is when they come back, one of the benefits of going abroad is that they accumulate skills while they're abroad. Yeah. So I think that's what you want to do, that even though it looks like this placement is kind of random, but if they accumulate a lot of skills when they come back, I think that's going to be the key. I mean, when they go abroad, they accumulate physical capital, right? They get money, which is very important. They can start their own businesses, build homes, buy tape recorders, all that stuff. But the question is, if they both get skills and physical capital, that's going to be the real boon to the economy. It's not just what they go earn abroad for foreign exchange, but if they upgrade themselves.
So I mean, in some sense, the how, what's the problem that we're trying to solve is moving up the ladder, creating this better matching within sort of the domestic market so that productive people get better returns. So you want to make this line go straight, as it were. The other big challenge, which I just want to bring Muhammad Ali Khan into, is this thing about the fourth industrial revolution.
Yes.
Although it seems to be coming with deindustrialization. But this notion that automation is disruptive. Now, Dirk seemed to mention that you can actually see opportunities. And the reason I'm accumulating these thoughts is that they'll give us the framing to go to the how. So how do you think automation will play into the future of the labor market?
So I think what you have to look at, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Is how the global economy, so we want to look at how the global economy is shifting from what used to be a manufacturing base in the developed economies, which had the benefits of productivity and technology and so on. Those jobs and those manufacturing facilities shifted to East Asia. So while development in terms of manufacturing capacity shifted, but there was a compensatory benefit in East Asia benefited. And so that caused a shift in the global economy in terms of the value chains of production. That's one aspect. The second aspect, I think, is what technology and this Industry 4.0 or the Industrial Revolution is doing is to expand the opportunities. Particularly, technology is driving changes in all kinds of sectors, including the services sector. So you see these huge platforms emerging, like the companies in the IT space, like Google and so on, which are creating massive opportunities. The second aspect is it's becoming much easier for people who have some skills but are not part of formal economic systems to be part of this gig economy or freelance economy. So you see this whole network of people who work in coding and in boot camps who get trained with short periods and they are able to translate and monetize that into really economic value added. And I think the thinking is that part of this change and this industrial revolution will create opportunities for people like that, which will be outside of the formal economic structures, but will still drive up employment, will drive up productivity, and still give opportunities to young people.
So in a sense, we have kind of a frame. The frame is that we're trying to move the job opportunities up the ladder as people go up. We want to solve this matching problem. We want to configure around skills that keep in mind the technology that is changing very rapidly. And then we're also talking about diversification of markets. So I want to move from this context, this is a contextual setting that we're trying to address, to now move to the how, right? How do you do this? How do you shift this? And I kind of liked what Dirk was saying, that it's not like there's that the minister has a switch that he's going to just turn on and everything's going to shift. So you really need to start to move different pieces which are lying in a very fragmented fashion. So when I was sitting there on the table and I was thinking about it, in some sense what we're trying to do is reconstruct a value chain, right, which enables us to achieve these outcomes that we've talked about. So what should be the component parts of that value chain? We're talking, the panel is about private-public collaboration. I think that bit comes later. The first thing, and that's where I want to bring in Fatimah and Zahra, is to really give us a sense about what should feed into the value chain. So I'd like to start with Zahra because she was moderating the panel on job readiness. But I want you to talk to the framing that I've put, because those are the contextual challenges that we're trying to address.
Sure. So I think what we heard in my panel was across industries, regardless of whether we're talking about manufacturing or finance, soft skills are important. As we want to go up this value chain that you're talking about, they will continue to become more important. And I want to go back to something that Dirk said, which was that we need to reshape the training machine to be outcomes focused. But rarely are soft skills noted in those outcomes as something that we need to focus on, and rarely do we have enough language around soft skills to dig deeper into what do we exactly mean when we say soft skills. And one of the things that we need to do is develop the language and what we're training and how we're training to the degree that we are doing in technical skills. And then figure out where the ownership of that lies, which is dispersed. So there are certain things that employers can do, and we heard all of the employers across the sectors that were on my panel on how they try to recruit for it, how they train for it, how they nurture it, how they talk about their culture and values from the loan officer all the way up to senior management to make sure that they enforce it. But there is another role outside of the employers where these skills need to be taught. And currently, they are not being taught in the TVET schools or the other training providers that are currently in the country.
So, tangibly speaking, what you're saying is the skills investment that's coming in, whether it's coming in from the private sector or the public sector, has to start to bring in soft skills as a very important part of their programs, essentially.
Absolutely, and I think we need to get deeper than just soft skills because there are specific intrinsic skills that are needed that are different across somebody that is doing a finance role or that somebody that is doing a manufacturing role, and we need to get much more smarter and crisper about how we talk about it.
And you're recommending basically that they should be merged into programs that give hard skills?
Correct, because we're teaching young adults. And the best practice on how you teach young adults is repeat and intensive practice, not on abstract concepts like empathy, but what does empathy mean for somebody that has an irate customer that they have to deal with, or somebody that has been defrauded on a loan, or whatever the situation may be.
So Fatimah, sort of one of the things that I struggled with on the panel on OEPs was there was a lot of discussion of what's going wrong right now. But if you think about this value chain approach, what I couldn't really figure out is where do the OEPs get placed here? Or what should be? We're really talking about placement, right? OEPs are just a mechanism of placement, right? So you have basically, you look at this market landscape, you say we have a different way to program skills, we get some ideas over there, there's some original ideas about how to do that, but now there's this broken piece which is to do with placement. So what were the kind of takeaways from your panel which allows me to populate that kind of value chain that I'm talking about?
So in our discussion as well, this issue came up about people being ill-prepared to work in different cultural contexts and working with different nationalities, people with different religions, different backgrounds. So again, the importance of behavioral skills, social skills came into play. And the role of the intermediaries seemed to be more like towards the towards the end, where you're talking about job placement. But again, they bridge a very important role in terms of linking the employers, understanding the employers' needs, and how the people, the workers, are actually either equipped or not equipped to meet those. So the one thing that the overseas employment promoters suggested was that the role of the commercial attaches at the embassies in the Pakistani missions, that needs to be strengthened, and they need to be more proactive. Because they were mentioning that, they, in terms of understand, even if they were to place people abroad, they're never sure of what kind of an employer that organization is, unless it's a very big employer who's well known. And they don't have the resources to go and check out the facilities of those employers abroad. Whereas an attaché placed abroad can actually go and go and meet the employer and visit that employer. But we sensed a strong lack on the part of the foreign missions to play that role in a proactive manner, in a targeted manner. In fact, maybe one suggestion would be to charge the Foreign Office to have targets for these commercial attaches, that in terms of how are they mobilizing employment opportunities, or checking or verifying the credentials and terms of the employers.
So one of the things that they're playing is this information role.
Sorry?
One of the recommendations is that you get embassies to play this information role. And you said that the OEPs should play this matching information role, where they're bringing in information into this value chain. But what about sort of dealing with the regulatory space? Because I thought one of the things that's shrinking is basically that there is localization of jobs. So, you know, we're sitting on the verge of an international economy where globalization is, in some sense, under threat, right? So what's the role there of embassies? What's the role of building reputations in terms of placement agents? Any thoughts on that, or should that be a moving piece?
That was, again, given the kind of, perceptions that are prevalent about the overseas employment promoters, that they are very exploitative. So it came up that there are sub-agents in the villages who, who are playing the role of the middlemen. So they are in turn connecting the workers with the overseas employment promoters, and they charge an exploitative fee. But they are currently not regulated. So we know that in every sector, there is a role that middleman performs, and there is a service that that middle person is charging, which is why they are charging the fee. So is there a way that the role of the these middle people or these subcontractors, can that be regulated? I think that warrants to be studied and to be seen if they can become, their role can be formalized, okay, if not done away with.
So let me bring Jawad in, because I was reading that report, and I think one of the takeaways from the report was to try and integrate the placement function in the TSPs and the skills programs themselves. So maybe you and Dirk could give us some sense of where that thinking was coming from, because that could be another important shift in the value chain.
Thank you, Ali. Yeah. I want to make a very brief point before that. What Dr. Andrabi shared with us through his research is something that we see through our experience. 60% of the labor force that goes to the Gulf goes on general labor visa, which means that they're not going for any specific skill. They're just going there because they have somebody who they know. So there's a relational factor that they're just going there and becoming a loader or becoming a security guard. And and once you complete your research, what you said is you want to find out whether they're actually bringing with any skills back with them. My conjecture would be that you will find that they are neither bringing back any skills with them, nor they're bringing back any savings with them. Because whatever money that they had paid the overseas, if they came across an exploitative overseas employment partner, then whatever money they paid to go, it'll take them about a year, 2 years to 2.5 years to actually pay that back. So that's the problem, and that's why we have, and there's a reason why the largest population of taxi drivers in the UAE is Pakistani. It's because there's a huge relational factor. There's from a certain part of our country. They all go there because somebody has a brother or a cousin, and they all end up going and becoming taxi and tax drivers. So I think that's that's the fundamental point we're making is we need to climb that value chain. Philippines, half the population of Pakistan, double the remittances. Sri Lanka, 1/10 of our population, and half our remittances. So, and that's essentially because the remittance per capita is high because they are in higher skilled jobs. Coming back to this, the point of placement, I agree with the minister that, we've got to start looking at return on skills investment, a metric that we've created at PSTF, and we're now slowly maturing it. We simply cannot continue this model of input funding in skills. Because of that model, the 100 rupees that you spend, 70 of them are going into meeting overheads. Only 30 rupees out of that 70 actually gets spent in actual training. And that's a model that is, and just you're really wasting 70% of the money because we have large structures and we have to manage the payrolls and the buildings. And this notion of government creating centers of excellence, again, is a misnomer. The government must only create the environment, let the private sector come and do that. Ali, one more point about the role of Foreign Office. It's great. They must go out and find pockets of opportunities. But and having lived in the UAE for 15 years, the only way we're going to take up the needle there is by developing very strong employer relationships. These employers there have long-standing recruitment value chains in many different countries. We have to deconstruct them. We have to make them believe in us and take a chance on us. And the way to do that is to have deep employer relationships, no amount of welfare officers, because they don't speak the language of the employer. They don't speak the business language. They can't make a business case. They will not be able to do this. We've got to start using the OEPs as our arms and ears in those foreign markets. They are profit-driven. They understand how to speak that language, especially the good ones. They're the ones who should go out and create these deeper relationships. And we as the government should incentivize them. The higher skill roles they are able to capture and bring back to Pakistan, the more we can incentivize in terms of price. So they automatically get driven to those roles. We at PSTF have started where we embed placement in income generation opportunities in every training contract we do. We link 20% of the total payment to those outcomes, and we monitor them rigorously. Sure. And the whole reason for that is essentially because we want to start creating this impact that the results are important, the inputs are not. Everybody, the training providers, the businesses, we all need to start delivering income generation results.
Dirk, do you have some thoughts on the architecture, and then Max?
Yes.
And then I'm going to go back to the domestic economy and bring Tahir back in.
So I really like your thought about integrating training providers and placement.
Okay.
I'm not sure that would necessarily work with the training providers we have today.
Okay.
But if you would move to a system where the training provider is incentivized to place, right, because that's how I get funded, suddenly I get a real interest to talk to an employer, understand kind of what their needs are, even secure the employment before the training, if that is possible. So suddenly you have a force there that can make that link. And on your question to government, we discussed that in with a couple of the colleagues here. I think government can also help. No doubt, attachés in the embassy should also reach out to employers more. It's typically just very difficult for government to do operational work.
Sure.
I would say if government focuses on good government-to-government relations, which are very important in the Gulf, if they focus on the right regulation to make sure that people can go there, there would be a huge value add, and then kind of a new kind of training provider could do the placement.
So very quickly, I think in terms of what Jawad was saying, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. ASEAN is a very good example of labor mobility. And as they are moving like the EU towards greater integration, there's this whole movement started of portability and validation of credentials across markets. So they've picked a few select professions and vocations that are easier to manage, nursing, accounting, and so on. And countries have started to put in place standards to say, okay, an accountant trained in Cambodia can go and work in Malaysia. What this has done, it's driving up the demand for English, because that's really the only common mode of communication between all these countries. But what it is doing is, it is creating a whole new space for the smaller ASEAN economies, for mobility of their skilled professionals into the region, which is, as you know, a huge region. So I think there are lessons to be learned here for Pakistan, whether it's on a bilateral or a multilateral basis. Those kind of relationships and networks, maybe with the GCC forum, these could be a step in the right direction in terms of getting our workers and skilled people placed abroad.
I'm going to come to your last. I just want to bring Tahir in, and then I'm going to come to the minister. So, Tahir, I want sort of this whole discussion of overseas labor also placed into a holistic policy around macroeconomy and microeconomic disruptions. So Tahir and I were having this debate. We have some concerns as macro people. But as you're going to move you're going to move up the ladder, you're also going to create disruptions at the bottom of the ladder. So there are guys in the middle who are getting these sweet deals at the moment, so they get disrupted. So, how do you see, given the labor market stuff that you've been doing, this shaping up, and what should the government holistically be thinking, and how do you place a remittance-driven economy and connect it to growth? basically.
Listen, Ali, before I say that, one comment you said about globalization under threat. In PSLM 2015, the median age of Pakistan is 18. The median age, I checked this morning, in the United States is 38.9. The median age in Italy is 45, and the median age in Japan is 47. I have a very good friend who is a Pakistani entrepreneur, a top entrepreneur in the US. He was telling me that the average age of the caregiver in Japan to the elderly is 65. Okay, so it's old people taking care of old people.
Yes.
Listen, there is a huge demand for young people. There are just no young people in Japan. There's no young people in Italy.
Yeah.
There's no young people anywhere in the West. That's why I'm opening a school of education here.
Yeah.
And the medical schools need to be opened there.
Yeah.
The reality is that there is these global, right? I mean, it's a battle between demography and politics.
Yes.
And the demography, I think, in the end will dictate. So, healthcare for the elderly is like a huge, 20% of the Japanese population is over 75.
Yeah.
So that's one. So, if I were the one, this nurses game is real. And then home delivery, this, that, it's not going away. So you just got to figure out where to place yourself. 2 points here. Most of migration to the Gulf is male. Okay? We have, by the way, 50% of our population is female. And I think the biggest question before me is actually not this in the labor force, is Pakistan has gone past a tipping point, which is now in Pakistani universities, there are more females than males. Everywhere now, everywhere. More females than males. In test scores, females are doing better. Medicine, health, pick a field. The question before us, and I think somebody's got to think about it, I don't know who thinks about these things, but somebody's got to think about the single most strategic question for Pakistan, which I think is our asset, is now we have a pool of moderately educated women. 10th, 12th, 10th, 12th, 10th, 12th, in millions, in tens of millions. And what are they doing? That's why I'm back in Pakistan, is because they're all in education. They're becoming teachers. That's the only thing that's open to them. I think for the people who are planning for the labor markets and stuff, that's the real game. Amartya Sen wrote a paper called Missing Women. In Pakistan, sir, we write a paper called Missing Men. Forget about men, think about women. They're going to take the country forward in the labor force, in the economy. And I'm not speaking as a progressive gender, hardcore economist. Second, last point on your thing. This is a larger point, guys. You got to think about it in macroeconomics. So, we were talking about labor economics and so on. In macroeconomics, there's a general equilibrium relationship between remittances and exports. There's an old saying, and I'll stop with that saying, I want to explain it. You can either export people or you can export goods. You can't do both. Exporting people and remittances creates increased demand for non-traded goods, construction, where all these people come back and do stuff. It creates it creates a squeeze on exports. That's why these oil-producing countries have never been able to produce exports in any other thing. So I think think about that a little bit, because if you're doing remittances, the government also wants to increase exports. I think you may not be able to do both.
Okay, Minister, a lot of food for thought. So I'll hand the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Cheema. I think in line with our mantra of having an outcome-oriented discussion, I'm here to actually take some views regarding what the government can do. So there are two aspects. There's the policy aspect, and then there's how we can catalyze. Some very interesting ideas and some graph which came up here. I think the softer skill thing is also a very important thing, because culturally, the countries which you are going to, there has to be some sort of assimilation happening once you are part of that culture. And then they even feel more comfortable taking in more people from our countries. So the softer interventions are very much required, I feel. And when they go over there, they should also be more inclusive in that society. And that's how things open up. I still personally feel that the Foreign Office is very underutilized. Perhaps if this is something which the Foreign Office can't manage, maybe it's time that we rethink some of our multilateral various programs which run for countries, that let them design a product, a program where they do roadshows, where they talk about the strengths of having, as Andrabi Saab rightly mentioned, of a young population which is driven, which is hardworking, which is able, and in that formative years where it can be molded skill-wise to do some great work. I think 1 or 2 programs need to be evolved in that way also. Going off tangent from the remittance aspect of it and our foreign labor, I think another way we can contribute is also to evaluate where our import bill is going up on areas where we can actually train our labor and reduce that. So the current account deficit over there can also come down. For example, let's take agriculture. Your edible import bill for oil is $3.5 billion. Why don't we look at the flip side of the coin? Why don't we have some interesting interventions taking place in the agriculture skill development side, where we can educate farmers to go for crop rotation, go for better selection of crops. And now we're also going through a very different sort of governance models coming into play, which is your third tier of government. Now you're having a local government system, an actual robust local government system is being planned. With limited resources, we're willing to part with 1/3 of our development funds going into local governments. Perhaps it would be good that we also start designing programs for capacity building of this new local government system which is coming about. That will also contribute significantly to the economy by saving on your expenses, by actually yielding the right desired results that we want. I personally feel that this should be a more ongoing exercise. And this is the time to give it that strategic direction. Because this government is actually looking forward to input coming from all of you. If post this seminar, if you could jot down a few things for the Foreign Office, for respective departments, I'd be happy to take it forward. Let's work on developing the right policies and how to catalyze this. Thank you.
So the one thing that I'd add to your policy and catalyzing things is also coordinating. Because it seems to me, and establishing relationships between, creating a framework for relationships between the private and public sector. So I guess we're out of time. So let me try and summarize.
I just want to take the cue from the minister and say that this, all the panels, this conference, we did live streaming of this. We have a team which is taking all the points that are being done. And at the end of the conference, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we have an outcome document coming out of this, which is going to capture all the key discussion points and the outcomes and who are the people that are going to be responsible for that. We're going to circulate it to all the stakeholders. And, we don't just want this conference to end here today by all these discussions. We want it to be alive, and we want to that the next time we come and meet, that we must have done some work on the areas that we've talked about. Thanks.
So let me kind of summarize this discussion. In some sense, we've talked about creating like a value chain that allows us to achieve these outcomes. I think 2 important parts which are kind of original that have come out of this discussion. One, which has been debated in the skills sector in Pakistan, but it really hasn't happened, is how do you enmesh soft skills basically into the skills training programs. And it seems that the returns to those skills are extremely important not only in terms of what people learn, but also in terms of their placement and the returns that they get. The second issue is that of who do you target? I mean, the point that Tahir made, which is about selection. But I think there are 2 points that came out of this discussion. One, obviously you want to match well. You want to match high productivity people to jobs with high returns. And so you want to straighten that curve up. But then there's also a question about what kind of populations, if you look at the future of the global economy and the domestic economy that you should be looking at. And it seems young people and women are two extremely important cohorts in this population that we need to be thinking about, and there may be specific constraints around these populations that need to be deepened in future discussion. The placement piece, I think, is less well specified. There's some ideas here, there's some discussion. Yes, embassies should play a role. What should be the incentive structures for placement agents? Should they be embedded with skills providers? I also think that there's an open question, should placement providers be subsidized or not? I mean, if the market can pay for it, why do you need to subsidize it? That's a case that I think you need to go back to the drawing board too and think through as to where the market failures are and when the subsidies get actually justified. And the last thing, which is this question about, there's a tension here between creating a remittance economy and the growth economy. We call it the Dutch disease. How do you manage this tension? Because I don't think Pakistan can step away from its remittance economy. That's not going to happen. And I think one thing that Tahir pointed to, which is an important point, is we have to, and if you look at basically India and you look at China, it's also driven largely by expatriate investment and the return and the re-import of skills. So how do you create those loops where Pakistanis who go abroad and they are accumulating savings and skills? The first question is, are they? So you get them to, and if they do, then how do you get them to start to reinvest? Because that might be one way to reintegrate into global value chains. And that's the thought I'd like to leave you with. And I'd like to thank you and hand it over to Jawad, who's the real master of ceremonies, not me.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you so much, the distinguished panelists, for taking part in this. I will, as a tradition, I will give out the power packs to all the panelists. They're always handy to be in the coat pocket or in the purse. We will always need them. I want to thank my audience. You have been an amazingly patient and a wonderful audience. We are very excited that we were able to put this conference together. We had the research done about 6 months ago, but it's really taken us about 6 months to get the report out and put this conference together. I want to thank all my speakers, the moderators and panelists, especially the ones that have flown from overseas to come and be our part of this conference. It's a wonderful pleasure. I got so many comments from people saying that how were you able to put together such high-powered panels together. So thank you. It's really because of you guys. So thank you very much, everybody, for being part of this. I also want to thank the Honorable Minister. I know he was very, very, very busy with his budget discussions, and I'm very sorry for pestering you so much and pushing you to be, but thank you so much for being part of this. I want to thank the entire PSDF team for making this happen. You guys have worked absolutely like the top-notch team. We've came together, everybody put their energies together, and thank you so much to you guys. I want to thank our MCs, Mashal and Salman, for being your master of ceremonies for this. We'd like to now formally close the conference, but please don't leave because there are refreshments right at the back of the hall. So please stay back and have those. Thank you very much once again.